What's going on, everyone? This is Sarah coming at you from just outside Hartford, Connecticut, and today we'll be discussing the 2020 Major League Baseball offseason. So, of course, we'll be discussing all of the big moves, and we will at least have something to say about every single team. Now, I just want to let you all know that we will not be discussing every single player that moved from organization A to B. We won't be discussing every single trade. And there will be some trades where I just mention a player as a, quote, prospect. And that's just because I don't want to have a long list of prospects to go over. But yeah, without further ado, we're just going to jump right in. So we're going to start with the AL East. And, of course, the first team will be the Baltimore Orioles. So they traded second baseman, shortstop Jonathan Villar to the Miami Marlins for some prospects. And then they also traded starting pitcher Dylan Bundy to the Los Angeles Angels for some more prospects. So in other words, Baltimore is not in for a good 2020. Sorry, guys. That's your best pitcher and your best, your best hitter and your best pitcher. So they did sign shortstop Jose Iglesias from Cincinnati this offseason. That was a pretty big signing. I'm a big fan of that one. I think Iglesias will be traded at the trade deadline, though. And then they really didn't lose any big name players, but designated hitter Mark Trumbo is still a free agent to date as of this recording. So then we get to the Boston Red Sox, and oh boy. So Boston, of course we know, Boston's in this weird salary cap situation. There's not a salary cap in baseball, but they have to pay more money because they're over the salary cap, So they traded outfielder Mookie Betts and starting pitcher David Price to the Los Angeles Dodgers for outfielder Alex Verdugo, a prospect named Jeter Downs, who's a shortstop, and another prospect. Now, originally, they were not going to be. That trade was a little worse. It was more one-sided in Los Angeles' favor. But that's the final trade. So I don't want to give grades to them. But as we know, Mookie Betts is one of the best outfielders in the game. So, and the irony is not lost on me that a player with the first name of Jeter is now in the Boston Red Sox organization. So, the irony is not lost on anyone in that one. So, Boston did sign starting pitcher Martin Perez from Minnesota, outfielder Kevin Pillar from San Francisco, pitcher Colin McHugh from Houston, shortstop Jose Pereza from Cincinnati, and on a minor league deal, they would sign catcher Jonathan Lucroy from the Chicago Cubs. They also re-signed first baseman Mitch Moreland. So, they're just getting a bunch of guys to kind of fill in the gap and some veterans. Pillar was one of my favorite signings this offseason. They got him for pretty cheap. Now, of course, they also gained Verdugo and a couple prospects, and then they lost starting pitcher Rick Porcello. He went to the New York Mets. And utility player Brock Holt, who went to the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, this is the fun part. So, we had the whole cheating scandal come out again. I don't want to get into too much detail on it, but basically what happened is they lost their 2020 second-round pick, and their replay systems operator was suspended for 2020, and he's limited in 2021. They also fired their manager, Alex Cora, for his role in the scandal. So they then had to hire a new manager, and they hired Ron Roenick. He's just a respected guy. Nothing really insane to say about him. But that's been Boston's offseason. Now we get to the New York Yankees, and they didn't make any trades of note this offseason, but they made the biggest signing of the offseason when they signed starting pitcher Garrett Cole to that massive 9-year, $324 million deal. He obviously came from the Houston Astros. They also managed to re-sign outfielder Brett Gardner. Now, they lost shortstop Didi Gregorius to the Phillies, designated hitter Edwin Encarnacion to the White Sox, and relief pitcher Dylan Betances to the New York Mets. So those are three big losses for the team. Betances is going to hurt, but at the same time, he's not an elite, he's not a closer. The Yankees at this moment are being investigated for a sign-stealing scandal of their own, just like the Red Sox. As of this moment, there is no information on any punishments or anything like that, so I'm not going to get into it. It's still up in the air. So now we get to the Tampa Bay Rays, and Tampa Bay made one of the bigger trades of the offseason when they traded outfielder Tommy Pham to the San Diego Padres for outfielder Hunter Renfroe. A pair of prospects were also exchanged in that trade. So I don't understand this trade. I think Tampa Bay got fleeced. I'm not a big fan of Renfroe. I'm not a big fan of the power bat. I like Tommy Pham. He does it all a little bit better. But I do understand why they made that trade because Renfroe's younger. So it is what it is. They made a couple trades. So they also trade pitching prospect Matthew Liberatore to the St. Louis Cardinals in exchange for first baseman outfielder Jose Ramirez. And then they also traded relief pitcher Emilio Pagan to the San Diego Padres for outfielder Manuel Margot. Now, 3 big trades in an offseason is kind of surprising. But you got to remember, Tampa Bay is a small market team. They can't really make a lot of noise in free agency. And again, they signed no players of note. So they did lose outfielder Avisail Garcia to the Milwaukee Brewers and catcher Travis Denard to the Atlanta Braves, as well as infielder Eric Sogard to the Milwaukee Brewers. So they lost some key names, no like huge names, but they made some good trades. So we'll see what happens. And then the Toronto Blue Jays, last team in the AL East, they traded for starting pitcher Chase Anderson from Milwaukee for a prospect. And then, their big move of the offseason was they signed starting pitcher Hyun-Jin Ryu from the Los Angeles Dodgers. They also signed starting pitcher Tanner Roark from the Oakland Athletics and infielder Travis Shaw from the Milwaukee Brewers. Travis Shaw has a chance to be one heck of a signing. If he can get his act together, he can easily become a key piece for Toronto. And then their biggest loss in free agency was first baseman Justin Smock, who actually went to the Milwaukee Brewers. So Milwaukee really had a big role in AL East this offseason. All right, so now we go to the AL Central. And first off, we have the Chicago White Sox. So they traded for outfielder Nomar Mazara from the Texas Rangers in exchange for a prospect. They would sign catcher Yasmani Grandal from the Milwaukee Brewers, starting pitcher Dallas Keuchel from the Atlanta Braves, and designated hitter Edwin Encarnacion from the New York Yankees. Their only big loss this offseason was of starting pitcher Ivan Nova. He went to Detroit. Now we get to the Cleveland MLB team, and they traded starting pitcher Corey Kluber to the Texas Rangers for a package. And one of the bigger names in that package of players that they got was outfielder Delino DeShields. They signed second baseman Cesar Hernandez from the Philadelphia Phillies and outfielder Domingo Santana from the Seattle Mariners. Interesting fact, those two big names, the two biggest names that they signed, were both former Phillies. Now, Santana was just a prospect when he was traded, but... and then they lost relief pitcher Tyler Clippard to the Minnesota Twins, and second baseman Jason Kipnis, who's a longtime staple in Cleveland, signed a minor league deal with the Chicago Cubs. Now we get to Detroit, and Detroit made no trades of note. They would sign second baseman Jonathan Scope from the Minnesota Twins, first baseman C.J. Cron from the Minnesota Twins, and starting pitcher Ivan Nova from the Chicago White Sox. They didn't lose any players of note. So they're just trying to get some veterans to help their team out. So now we get to the Kansas City Royals. Now, the Royals hired a new manager in Mike Matheny, so good luck to him. They made no big trades of note. They signed third baseman Maikel Franco from the Phillies and re-signed outfielder Alex Gordon, who's been on the team for what feels like an eternity at this point. And then they really didn't lose any players of note. So pretty quiet offseason for the Royals. Now we get to the Twins, and the Twins traded for starting pitcher Kenta Maeda from the Dodgers in exchange for a couple prospects. And then they made some more moves. So they signed third baseman Josh Donaldson from the Atlanta Braves, starting pitcher Homer Bailey from the Oakland Athletics, starting pitcher Rich Hill from the LA Dodgers, catcher Alex Avila from the Arizona Diamondbacks, relief pitcher Tyler Clippard from the Cleveland organization, and they re-signed starting pitcher Michael Pineda. So they made some moves. And then they did lose Tyler Gibson, starting pitcher, to the Texas Rangers. Obviously, second baseman Jonathan Scope and first baseman C.J. Cron, both to their rival Detroit Tigers. Both of those moves are good in my opinion for Detroit. Now we get to the AL West. And we start off with the Houston Astros. So again, we already have a video out about the Houston Astros scandal. I'm just going to quickly summarize it here. So, of course, they fired their manager, AJ Hinch, and general manager, Jeff Lono. So after both were suspended for the 2020 season. So they made a controversial hire when they hired Dusty Baker to be their manager. Everybody loves and respects Dusty Baker. And now he has to get this team out of that garbage situation. I feel so bad for Dusty Baker. Most people do. He's on a 1-year deal, so he very well might just be gone after this year. And they also hired James Click to be their general manager. The team was fined $5 million due to the scandal, and they were forced to forfeit their first and second round picks in the 2020 and 2021 MLB drafts. This is all due to the sign stealing scandal. So how did their offseason go? Well, obviously, they made, after the whole, not including the sign stealing scandal, they traded away outfielder Jake Marisnick to the New York Mets for a prospect. They re-signed relief pitcher Joe Smith and catcher Martin Maldonado. So they really weren't big players. But they lost starting pitcher Garrett Cole to the New York Yankees, starting pitcher Wade Miley to the Cincinnati Reds, and starting pitcher Colin McHugh to the Boston Red Sox. McHugh had kind of fallen out of favor for the team, but still worth mentioning. So now we get to the Los Angeles Angels, and they hired a new manager in Joe Maddon. Everybody knows and loves Joe Maddon. Well, at least respects Joe Maddon. They traded for starting pitcher Dylan Bundy from the Baltimore Orioles. And then they also traded for third baseman Zach Cozart. Or they traded him, I should say, to the San Francisco Giants in a salary dump. Now, why did they need to dump salary? Simple. They signed third baseman Anthony Rendon from the Washington Nationals. Heck of a signing. If it weren't for Garrett Cole, he would have been the biggest contract this offseason. They also signed starting pitcher Julio Teheran from the Atlanta Braves, and they did lose outfielder Cole Calhoun to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now we get to the Oakland Athletics, and the Athletics traded away starting pitcher Jarrell Cotton to the Chicago Cubs, and they traded second baseman Jerickson Profar to the San Diego Padres. Both of them were traded for prospects, so Cotton wasn't too big of a trade, but he was worth mentioning. They re-signed relief pitcher Jake Diekman, and then they lost starting pitcher Tanner Roark to Toronto, relief pitcher Blake Trinan to the Los Angeles Dodgers, starting pitcher Homer Bailey to the Minnesota Twins, and starting pitcher Brett Anderson to the Milwaukee Brewers. Now we get to Seattle, and Seattle made a bit of a surprising trade to me when they traded their starting catcher Omar Narvaez to the Milwaukee Brewers for a prospect. Again, Milwaukee needed a catcher. We'll get to that in a little bit. They did sign starting pitcher Tawan Walker from the Arizona Diamondbacks, but in turn they lost their one of their outfielders in Domingo Santana to the Cleveland team, and arguably their best pitcher of all time. I hate to say it because they did have Randy Johnson, but their best pitcher of all time, and Felix Hernandez, signed a minor league deal with the Atlanta Braves. We'll get to him in a second too. So Texas Rangers are the last team of the AL to discuss, and they traded for starting pitcher Corey Kluber from the Cleveland organization. And like I said, a package that included outfielder Delino DeShields. And they also traded outfielder Nomar Mazara to the White Sox for a prospect. So they really didn't make too many big moves in free agency. They signed Kyle Gibson from the Twins, and they lost outfielder Hunter Pence to the Giants. Hunter Pence returning to San Francisco. So now we get to the National League. The National League East is where we're going to start off. So Atlanta, they made no trades of note. They signed relief pitcher Will Smith from the San Francisco Giants, outfielder Marcelo Zuna from the St. Louis Cardinals, starting pitcher Cole Hamels from the Chicago Cubs, and starting pitcher Felix Hernandez on a minor league deal from Seattle. Now, Hernandez has recently opted out of the 2020 season, so it's as if they didn't sign him. But when I wrote this, he hadn't opted out yet, so I just wanted to mention him. One heck of a pitcher. Possible Hall of Fame case. I don't know if we'll get in. They lost third baseman Josh Donaldson to the Twins, starting pitcher Dallas Keuchel to the White Sox, and starting pitcher Julio Teheran to the Angels. Patrick's happy that they got rid of Turan, I'll tell you that. He's not a fan of a Julio Turan. Now we get to the Miami Marlins. And the Marlins acquired second baseman shortstop Jonathan Villar from the Orioles for prospects. Villar was an interesting case, too. The Orioles basically cut him, and the Marlins claimed him, but they didn't cut him straight out, so they had to trade for him. It's weird. The Marlins did sign outfielder Corey Dickerson from the Phillies, and they lost second baseman Starlin Castro to the Washington Nationals. So they basically stayed in division for those two moves. Then we get to the New York Mets, and they were a messy situation. They hired a new manager in Carlos Beltran, the former player. And then the whole sign stealing scandal came out, and he was involved in it for Houston. So, they fired him. He felt that he could get past the whole thing, but the organization didn't want the dark cloud hanging over, so they fired him. And they would hire Luis Rojas. He was just a minor league coach for the team. He's well respected throughout the organization. So they traded for outfielder Jake Marisnick from Houston for a prospect. And then they signed relief pitcher Dellin Betances from the Yankees, starting pitcher Rick Porcello from the Red Sox, and relief pitcher Michael Wacha from the Cardinals. Wacha's a guy I'm high on. I'm a big fan of him. It's unfortunately he's a reliever now in this stage of his career, and then their only big free agent that they lost was starting pitcher Zach Wheeler to the Philadelphia Phillies. Speaking of the Phillies hired a new manager this offseason in Joe Girardi. I'm excited for Joe Girardi. As you guys know, I'm a Phillies fan. I'm very excited for Joe Girardi. The whole Yankees sign stealing scandal scares me because there's a chance that Joe Girardi might have to be fired because of it. But again, we'll figure that out when we get there. So the Phillies didn't make any trades of note this offseason. They did sign starting pitcher Zach Wheeler from the Mets and shortstop Didi Gregorius from the Yankees. And then they lost outfielder Corey Dickerson to the Marlins, second baseman Cesar Hernandez to the Cleveland team, and third baseman Michael Franco to the Royals. And last but not least, we have the defending World Series champion Washington Nationals. They did not make any trades of note. Now, they did sign relief pitcher Will Harris from the Houston Astros, second baseman Starlin Castro from the Miami Marlins, and they re-signed starting pitcher Steven Strasburg. Big fan of Strasburg. They also lost third baseman Anthony Rendon to the Los Angeles Angels. If you're a Nationals fan, let me just say I am a big fan of a move that you guys recently announced. They recently said that their prospect, whose name I am blanking on for the life of me, is going to be starting at third base now. It's killing me. I can't think of his name right now. But I'm very happy for him. He's a good player. I'm a big fan of his. He's typically a middle infielder, but they're starting him at third because of Anthony Rendon walking away. Good future. The Nationals scare the heck out of me as a Phillies fan. I'll tell you that right now. So now we get to the NL Central, and we're going to start off with the Cincinnati Reds. So the Reds, they made no real trades of note, and then they made some moves. They signed outfielder Nicholas Castellanos from the Chicago Cubs, third baseman Mike Moustakas from the Milwaukee Brewers, starting pitcher Wade Miley from the Houston Astros, and they signed outfielder Shogo Akiyama from Japan. So they basically got a couple big name outfielders to join their team. Akiyama is going to be an interesting pick up. Will he adapt? Hopefully, but we'll see. And then they really didn't lose any big players of note. Yes, they lost Iglesias, but then we get to the Chicago Cubs, and they traded for star pitcher Jarrell Cotton from Oakland, as I mentioned before. They also signed outfielder Steven Sosa Jr. from the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they lost Nick Castellanos to the Cincinnati Reds and Cole Hamels to the Atlanta Braves. They also hired a new manager this offseason, David Ross, well-respected player. How will he do as a manager? Probably pretty good, I hope. Then we get to the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Brewers made a couple trades. So they traded outfielder Trent Grisham and starting pitcher Zach Davies to the San Diego Padres for second baseman Luis Urias. I don't know why, some of these names just get me. Urias, sorry, it's Luis Urias. They also traded for catcher Omar Narvaez from Seattle for a prospect, and they traded starting pitcher Chase Anderson to the Toronto Blue Jays for a prospect. Now, they signed outfielder Avisail Garcia from the Rays and starting pitcher Josh Lindblom from the Pirates. Now, Lindblom's an interesting story. He was out of baseball for a while, and then he comes back. He was overseas, he comes back, and he became a big name for some reason. He's got some good potential. Now, you might be wondering why they traded for a catcher. That's because they lost their starting catcher, Yasmani Grandal, to the White Sox in free agency. They lost their third baseman, Mike Moustakas, to the Reds. And they lost starting pitcher Jordan Lyles to the Rangers. Now I get to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Pirates, they hired a new manager as well this year in Derek Shelton. They traded outfielder Starling Marte to the Diamondbacks for prospects. They're trying to kickstart a rebuild. So... they signed outfielder Jared Dyson from the Diamondbacks, speaking of the Diamondbacks, and then they lost Josh Lindblom to the Milwaukee Brewers. Relatively quiet offseason for them. Then we get to the St. Louis Cardinals. They traded first baseman outfielder Jose Martinez to the Tampa Bay Rays for prospect pitcher Matthew Liberatore. That's a fair trade on both parts. I think that St. Louis wins that trade. I like Liberatore a bit. So basically, the Cardinals didn't make any big free agent signings, but they did re-sign, one of their better pitchers in their franchise, and Adam Wainwright. And then they did lose relief pitcher Michael Wacha to the Mets and outfielder Marcell Ozuna to the Braves. Now we get to the last division in baseball, the NL West. So, of course, we're going to start with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they would trade for outfielder Starling Marte from the Pittsburgh Pirates for prospects. Now, they signed starting pitcher Madison Bumgarner from the Giants and outfielder Cole Calhoun from the Angels. And then they lost catcher Alex Avila to the Twins and second baseman Wilmer Flores to the Giants. So, I don't know what the heck to say about the Diamondbacks, man. They're just in this random state of, are we good, are we competitive, or are we not? They're always going to be in this state. They keep spending money on free agents, but they're not committing to win. So, they're just weird. Colorado was the easiest thing to do. Literally this offseason, they did absolutely nothing but piss off Nolan Arenado by, saying, oh, yeah, we'll listen to trade rumors for him. We'll listen to trades for Nolan Arenado. But they literally didn't make any trades, didn't sign anybody, didn't lose anybody. So they're going to be pretty much the same team this season as they were last season, except now they have a pissed off Nolan Arenado. So the Dodgers, they traded their outfielder Alex Verdugo and prospect Jeter Downs to Boston for outfielder Mookie Betts and starting pitcher David Price. And then they traded starting pitcher Kenta Maeda to the Twins for a prospect. Now, obviously, David Price, I wanted to save it for the Dodgers. He did opt out for the 2020 season, so that's going to hurt the Dodgers. Still, the fact that Mookie's free agents offseason also hurts the Dodgers. So basically, we'll see what happens. Again, I'll do a trade breakdown on this trade in a couple years. But this trade just, oh my goodness. It looked like a steal at the beginning, but now it's big question mark. Because if we don't have a season in 2020, let's just say the cases spike and they cancel the season, Mookie's still a free agent without ever playing for the Dodgers. So they did sign relief pitcher Blake Trinan from the Oakland Athletics and relief pitcher Jimmy Nelson from the Milwaukee Brewers. And then they did lose starting pitcher Hyun-Jin Ryu to the Blue Jays and starting pitcher Rich Hill to the Twins. Now we get to the San Diego Padres, and they have a new manager in Jace Tingler. So they traded second baseman Luis Urias to Milwaukee for starting pitcher Zach Davies and outfielder Trent Grisham. They also traded outfielder Hunter Renfroe to Tampa Bay for outfielder Tommy Pham. And then they also traded outfielder Manuel Margot to Tampa Bay for relief pitcher Emilio Pagan. And then they also acquired second baseman Jerickson Profar from the Athletics for prospects. So they were pretty active on the trade market this year. They signed pitcher Drew Pomeranz from the Milwaukee Brewers, and they didn't lose anybody of note. Last but not least, we have the San Francisco Giants, and they hired a new manager this offseason in Gabe Kapler. If you're a Giants fan, good luck. Kapler makes some boneheaded moves. He's liked, but he makes some boneheaded moves, I'll tell you that right now. So they traded for third baseman Zach Cozart from the Angels in a salary dump, and then they proceeded to cut him Cozart is still a free agent right now. When he signs, I'll mention it in a tweet or something, but he's not a huge name at this point. They would also sign pitcher Kevin Gausman from the Cincinnati Reds organization, outfielder Hunter Pence from Texas, and second baseman Wilmer Flores from the Diamondbacks. And then they lost one of their best pitchers in Madison Bumgarner, to the Diamondbacks, and relief pitcher Will Smith to the Braves. So that was the MLB offseason. Obviously, I didn't discuss every single player. I didn't discuss every single trade. But yeah, that was the MLB offseason. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We only get to do it once a year. I'll do a trade deadline recap when we get to the trade deadline as well, because that's always fun to do. But again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And for the life of me, I still can't think of that prospect for the Nationals who they're calling up, and it's really bothering me. But he's a heck of a player. I'm very excited for him. He made an appearance last season, but didn't do good when Trey Turner got hurt in the beginning of the season. So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one.